welcome back. Time for another episode of Revenue Optimization Radio. Brought to you today by the good folks, Upland Altify, the sales transformation company.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Revenue Optimization Radio. We appreciate you tuning in from wherever you are in the world. If you like what you hear, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. If you don't like what you hear, or you've got any feedback on the show, you can find me, Sean Broderick, on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or you can contact us at Upland Altify on the website. Today, we're going to cover the issue of sustaining momentum in sales in a mergers and acquisitions world. My guest today has worked all over Europe managing sales teams and growing businesses in the financial services and payments sector. Based on his track record and, of course, his eminent suitability for the role, he's just been appointed the General Manager of Worldpay Ireland. Garrett, Clifford, welcome to the show.
Sean, thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners' benefit.
Sure. So I've been in payments, I think it's my 21st year. Started off in 1999 with ITG, which now has moved on to become Payzone, and worked with companies like Tyron, Elevon, Ulster Bank, and now with Worldpay. And I've been with Worldpay since 2011.
Okay, so a long history of financial services experience.
Yeah, absolutely, and lots of travel involved in that, which is par for the course with the jobs that I've had over the last number of years. So it's taken me to some great places around the world, meeting great people and experience in a lot of different payment solutions right across the globe. Okay,
so from a Worldpay perspective, I know that you guys merged with financial powerhouse FIS last year. Talk to me about that company and the size of it, and a background to FIS Worldpay for anybody who maybe uses the services but maybe hasn't perhaps heard the brand.
The FIS as a company is probably one of the biggest brands and companies that you've never heard of. Traditionally, they have operated in two strongholds of their business would be banking networks. So about 90% of the global banks would use their networks to move money around the globe. And they also have a corporate liquidity and treasury management business. And traditionally, they had a very small merchant services business up to the time of buying Worldpay back in July of last year. So they've suddenly catapulted themselves from being a very small player in merchant services to being the global player, being the number one global player today. And that has obviously had a huge impact on how FIS operate. And I think some stats about FIS, we have about 53,000 employees. We operate out of 186 offices globally. And we have about 142 different companies within the FIS group. We're headquartered in Jacksonville in Florida, and then our international headquarters are based in London. So it's been a whirlwind journey since FIS took over Worldpay in July. And obviously there's been lots of learnings on both sides of the company, because equally as a player in merchant services, albeit very small, they've had a lot to learn about how Worldpay operates, and buying into a company of our size, giving our broad spectrum of product sets and also the operations and solutions that we provide, but also the global reach that we provide for our customers. It's been a big learning curve for FIS, but equally a very big learning curve for Worldpay in terms of new products and solutions that we now have the opportunity to look at and bring those to our existing customer base.
I'm sure. And that's, I guess, the nub of the issue, which we really want to hone in on today. Having that type of a broader product set, the number of different companies that sit underneath the FIS Worldpay banner, how does that change the go-to-market model for sales as it relates to the revenue team?
Very good question, Sean. I think obviously we're still in the infancy of learning the other products and solutions, but obviously from a sales perspective, it now gives us greater reach. It allows us to have different conversations with both existing and prospect customers. And some of the customers that FIS operate with outside of merchant solutions, some familiar names like One for All, which is probably one of the largest gift card solutions here in Ireland and in the UK, that runs on the FIS network. So that gives you an example of the depth and breadth of some of the solutions that FIS provide today. Just going back to, the sales opportunities, obviously we're working very strongly with our counterparts and colleagues in FIS to understand, one, the products, but two, more importantly, the opportunities that those bring to us. And equally, it's the same can be said from our side on the merchant solutions that we're now exploring some other opportunities with some of the FIS colleagues as well. So it's been, as I say, a whirlwind journey, but I think we're now in a position where we fully understand what those opportunities are. We think it brings a different conversation piece to end users, and also puts us in a very unique position where we can suddenly start to have very different conversations with both equally very large retailers, but also some retailers in the SMB and mid-market sectors as well.
Okay, and I think that is an interesting parallel to Upland Altify. So Altify were acquired by Upland Software in October of 2019 also, and we're in a similar scenario. We're part of a brand new business unit where we have quadrupled the number of products that we would have had before. So it puts a lot of tools in a salesperson's toolkit, but again, they can't lose sight of where the opportunity is and try to boil the ocean. How do you manage the sales training aspect of all the brand new solutions? Obviously, there is a lot less travel with the current virus and pandemic climate out there. How have you ramped up the training for the broader product set?
So thankfully, Worldpay has invested and had invested quite heavily in training procedures and product training with our staff. And a lot of that can be done remotely. And that fits very well with the current climate that we find ourselves in today. FIS were on a different path, but a similar strategy in terms of learning and educating staff around products and solutions. So we've combined the best of both of those solutions to come up with what we believe is probably one of the best solutions in the market for a training perspective. And as I said, remotely, that is very achievable today. So within Worldpay, to give you an example, we started on a journey with a sales methodology called DAPA, which is split into two categories, DA and PA. That's a very simple process. DA stands for define and agree, and PA stands for propose and agree. And really what we've looked at here is how do we communicate with our customers? What is the first thing that we need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is understand what the customer is actually looking to achieve. So DA is very much about listening to the customer, getting them to explain exactly what it is they're looking to achieve, what products they're looking to implement, and what that will mean to their business, and also what will it mean to the growth of their business. The PA piece is understanding what the customer is looking for and then playing that back to them and actually presenting back to them exactly what it is they're looking to achieve. I think sales organizations across various different sectors are very guilty of trying to sell everything. What we have done is honed in and focused on what exactly the problem is and what the prospect or customer is looking to achieve, and be very clear about how we present that back to them. And we think bringing that into Worldpay has significantly increased our success rate, but also it allows our staff to educate themselves around new products and solutions, either remotely, and back in the time when we didn't have this COVID-19, that we held a lot of face-to-face training sessions. We have also brought that into the FIS environment, and they've very much embraced this and see it as a very positive way to move sales organizations forward. So I think we're also looking at how FIS have traditionally trained their staff on sales solutions and products, and as I say, we're getting the best of both worlds from both organizations.
That's great to hear. And it's interesting. Our SVP of our business unit, Pat Morrissey, always says the best methodology is the one you use. So pick whichever one you're actually going to double down on, pick which one which you're going to buy into and use that. And I think it draws a lot of parallels with, how we like to run our business and talk to our customers, which is what's your customer's strategy and how can we help? Rather than here's our list of tools that we're trying to sell you, you need to figure out exactly in that DA portion of the DAPA piece, why is this relevant for our customers?
Absolutely, and I think it's been a game changer for Worldpay. I think, when we look at some of the stats, we implemented DAPA about 2.5 years ago. We've trained all of our staff worldwide in that process, and I think we've seen an uplift of around 21 to 22% in our success rate in selling. And the feedback we've had from customers about DAPA and how that works in that environment has been very positive, because it gets to the nub of the issue rather than, as I said, trying to sell a multitude of products that they may not necessarily need. We're really getting in, and the customer feels that we're getting to understand their problems very distinctly and able to turn that solution around much quicker because it's a clearer understanding from both sides of the fence.
It's that trusted advisor from a vendor transformation, I think, is what a lot of organizations are trying to get to. And it sounds like with those results that you're really getting there as well. I think from the last number of weeks, we really have seen a massive shift in terms of how we pay for goods and services, Garrett. People are, I guess, the shift to a cashless society was probably already in train, but something like COVID-19 sweeping the globe, how likely is that to speed up that shift and people wanting to handle cash a lot less than they would have done before? How do you feel that that is likely to speed up that transition?
Yeah, I think you're right, Sean. I think obviously with the pandemic that we have in the world today has obviously got people thinking, and certainly, the handling of cash, I think you're right in terms of we were looking to move towards a cashless society, but I think this has just expedited this. And I think the feedback from the general public is that they would much prefer to use their card and prefer to use it in a contactless environment more so than using cash. So we have seen a massive uplift, and I think we're not the only one in this industry to see a massive uplift in contactless transactions. Ireland has always been ahead of the curve, and I think there's been a huge uplift, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years since contactless was introduced into the Irish market as becoming the preferred payment method. Obviously, the €30 limit, prevents a certain barrier above which you can't go. And so if you think of high value sales, things like grudge purchases like fuel or buying anything above the €30 limit certainly moves you into a different environment. Obviously, yes. Apple Pay, Google Pay can support you in those environments. But what we have now, we've been in discussions with both of the major schemes, both in Ireland and the UK. And I'm glad to say that the €30 limit is going to be increased to €50 from the 1st of April. Obviously, it will take time, because there's lots of different solutions. There are lots of different cogs in the wheel. You've got card issuers, you've got standalone solutions, you've got integrated payments, and they all have to make significant changes. It's not as simple as changing the 3 to a 5. But obviously, once that happens, I think we're going to see a significant change in how consumers pay for goods today. This has been a huge learning curve for everybody, and I certainly believe that there's a silver lining to this, in that it will expedite the cashless society in Ireland. I think if we look at countries like Sweden and Finland, who are far ahead in terms of cashless and contactless versus cash, I think Ireland is probably going to be leading this after that. I think we will probably be ahead of other major European countries in terms of our adaptation of contactless, and has become the norm, but I think it would become even more so the norm over the next months and years ahead.
Interesting. And I think obviously the US is a massive innovation center where a lot of new companies and technology comes out of, but it's actually one market that I've always felt has been lacking in that regard. I guess something like this, it throws up a lot of opportunity for FIS Worldpay as well to speed up this adoption for retailers, to speed it up from an e-commerce perspective. How is FIS and Worldpay adapting to take advantage of that opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always amazed that, big and all as the US is, and, you have a 330 million population, card is the preferred payment method, yet they haven't advanced with EMV to chip and pin as much as other countries, and certainly contactless is well behind the curve if we look at other countries in the world that have adopted it. So I think, again, this is going to be a paradigm shift globally. I think Ireland will embrace this, and we tend to be a nation that embraces new technology a lot quicker than other areas. But I think the US, this will be a massive learning curve for them. Again, I think it will expedite how consumers pay for goods. And obviously, I think the issuers and the acquirers in the US, including ourselves, are looking at this quite closely. I think FIS are probably ahead of the curve from some of our US competitors, in that we have the systems and the experience and the knowledge, given what Worldpay has achieved to date across Europe. And we are already, from a technology perspective, ready to embrace that. And I think we will be one of the major players who will probably change how US consumers pay today.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to take a break to pay some bills. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how we get sales teams up to speed on a broader product set, and also some of the sales tools and technology that can enhance the sales process.
We live in a subscription economy. You're only as successful as your customers, and that requires a mindset shift from what's our strategy for the customer to what's our customer's strategy and how can we help. Focusing on your customers' needs and providing value in every interaction is critical to building long-term relationships and sustained sales success. The challenge for most sales leaders and their teams is their sales process doesn't match how customers buy in today's digital world. Sustained growth and sales execution are impossible because the revenue team isn't aligned with consistent process and methodology to understand their customers' people and their problems. Altify's customer revenue optimization solutions activates the entire revenue team with a combination of strategy, methodology, and applications to help companies deliver more value to their customers. The result is increased sales velocity, improved win rates, and increased customer satisfaction. With a CRO strategy, now you can effectively collaborate across the entire revenue team to win new business and unlock more cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Built natively on the Salesforce platform, Altify helps revenue leaders and their teams achieve sustained revenue growth and sales success. Visit altify.com today to see how they help accelerate sales performance for some of the world's best sales teams, including Autodesk, Comcast, GE, Honeywell, Salesforce, Tableau, and United Health Group.
You're very welcome back to Revenue Optimization Radio. I'm here with Garrett Clifford, the General Manager of Worldpay Ireland. Before the break, we talked a little bit about the merger of Worldpay and FIS, what that does for the go-to-market model for sales, and how the technology behind FIS and Worldpay is likely to enhance the shift to a cashless society. Garrett, can we talk a little bit more about getting sales teams up to speed on a broader product set? You mentioned that there is 53,000 employees as part of your group now, 142 companies and infinite number of products. Tell me a little bit about your go-to-market model and how that's shifted since the acquisition. And from a product point of view, how many more products are your sales team now selling versus what they would have been before?
Sure. Well, I think we're in a very good position within FIS that we've quickly identified the need to move the dial and collaborate together amongst the various sales teams. You know, with such a broad product set, it's important that we don't overload our salespeople with too much, but equally that we need to fine tune to find the right sales products for them that complement what they already do, or also complement the types of sectors that they're already involved in. So we've identified our business model really from a Worldpay perspective is split into two. We've got global e-com, which focus on the very large e-tailers, the household names that you would know and shop from today. And those salespeople are very specialized from a gateway e-commerce perspective. They look at things like, fraud prevention and risk management tools to work in parallel with some of the big e-tailers and how they manage their business and protect themselves. And that opens opportunities from a networks perspective because a lot of these e-tailers are actually operating third-party networks to run their business on. And one of FIS strengths from a product perspective is providing network solutions. So that kind of fits very much hand in glove. To answer your question around how many additional products, it's probably unknown as yet, but I think it's safe to say that we probably would be adding another 3 to 4 key products, but equally bringing specialists along with those additional products. Some of the products that FIS sell, particularly in the network selection, is very specialized, and to get salespeople who have never sold that product before up to speed can take considerable time. So what we've looked at is leveraging the experience from both sides of the business. So to give you an example of where somebody within our merchant solutions business may have significant contacts in certain sectors, rather than specifically training them up to sell a network, for example, we would leverage off the experience that we have within FIS, people who have sold and understand those products very well. But that also allows the Worldpay people to understand and to get a bit more embedded within the other products. It's not something that will happen overnight, but I think leveraging both sides of both FIS and Worldpay and the strengths of the products that we bring, leveraging the experience together, we've already opened many doors. And as I said earlier, having different conversations, suddenly we're having conversations with existing customers and prospects that we would never have envisioned having before. And that certainly has brought that trusted advisor aspect to our game. And I think it differentiates us from our competitors across a multitude of sectors, but also a multitude of products as well. So it's been a huge learning curve for salespeople. Some of those have embraced it very quickly. Others will need a bit more time. Obviously, we're trying to get to understand the sales tools that FIS have used and how that fits well with Worldpay and vice versa. So I think, there's a great opportunity for FIS as a group to come away with probably one of the best sales toolbox, for want of a better word, that we've seen in the market today. So it's really encouraging and promising.
That's really interesting. And I suspect there's a lot of white space there across pre-existing clients on both sides of the house, both from Worldpay and FIS.
Absolutely. I think, if we look at the bank side of our business, so we partner with a lot of banks across Europe. So some banks would not have their own merchant solutions business. They may have sold it previously. If we look at people like Bank of Ireland who sold their merchant solutions business to Elavon back in 1998. So a lot of banks have outsourced and are looking for partners to work with them. That also opens opportunities for us from a bank network perspective, because suddenly we're not just talking about potential partnership and merchant solutions. We're talking about maybe providing the most up-to-date digital banking platforms that are out there. We've had a recent fantastic win in Germany with a company called Opel Bank, which is probably not very familiar to most people that will be listening. But Opel Bank have made the decision to move away from a very archaic bank network, which, believe it or not, a lot of banks today are still using, and move themselves into the digital world. And this is where FIS bring huge strength and knowledge and experience. The purchase of the digital bank network for Opel was probably the most significant purchase that they've made in a number of years. And that in itself opens up further opportunities. Opel, for example, do not have a merchant solutions provider, so hence it will allow us to have conversations with them about that. So these cross-sell opportunities have suddenly become very big, and as you say, a lot of white paper that we can explore today.
There's the life cycle of those products tends to be absolutely huge. I guess when their initial vendor for their solution sold into them, I didn't suspect that they thought they would have got 20 to 25 years out of that particular product. I think products these days aren't typically, the SLAs aren't 10, 15, 20 years. But I think, back in the late 90s and early noughties, it tends to be a lot longer in that regard.
Absolutely. I mean, for any bank to make a decision to move their network is a huge risk for them to do it. And you're right, some of the archaic systems that are still in play today have been around for 15, 20, 25 years. But I think as the open banking network will start to materialize later on this year, which means that consumers will have the option to pay for goods and services directly from their bank account into whoever they're buying from, directly into their bank account. The archaic bank systems that are here today, some of those cannot support that. And there is an EU mandate for open banking to be in place by the end of this year. That will mean that banks have to make a decision about how they can accept the open bank process within the current systems that they have. Most of them will find that they won't be able to do that and will have to make a decision of either moving a certain section of their network to a digital provider like ourselves, or potentially look at this from a full bank network moving. So, that again provides massive opportunities for us. We're hugely experienced in bank networks, and I think, any of the banks that we operate with today, are testament to the success of our business. And I think as we start to get banks to move into a digital age, the benefit to consumers will be immense, and suddenly moving money from A to B will become as simple as it should be, and yes, not as difficult as it has been in the past.
And improving the customer experience while they're doing it. Before the break, Garrett, you talked about your commitment to methodology, I suppose, and sales training. Talk to me about some of the sales tools and the technology that you use in both FIS and Worldpay to enhance the sales process and drive those increases in sales that you talked about before the break.
Sure. So we spent a lot of time talking to our salespeople to understand how we can make life easier for them, but also to allow them to make life easier for people that they're talking to. And I think automation has been key. We have automated a lot of the processes that traditionally would have been manual within our organization. So we're very heavily dependent on things like Salesforce as our CRM. That allows us to keep track and understand exactly where we are at any given point with customer interaction. We've moved that into the mobile space. So, most of our salespeople are either work from home or very much remote working. So they're not in the office as much as traditionally as they had been before. So that allows them to, gain access to material, product demos, direct interaction with customers, and also starting to build that sales case with a prospect. And, using the DAPA methodology, as I mentioned previously, that has been a game changer for us. It really has, because our salespeople, like everybody else, have a certain amount of time. And, it may seem a little bit blunt, but we have to ensure that our salespeople devote their time to the right opportunities. You can spend a lot of time chasing around and never going to win. So even bringing that back to, RFPs and tender processes, each time we're invited, it goes through what we call a bid clinic, and that determines our success rate as to whether this is an RFP that we should actually be bidding for, and if we have a genuine reason as to why we will win this. What products do we have that our competitors don't have? What solutions can we provide that are not in the market from anyone else? And we go through that process to ensure that we spend the right amount of time on the right opportunities. Combining all of that in terms of the technology that we use, the methodology that we use, that has allowed our salespeople to focus the right amount of time on the right opportunities. And as I said, our success rate in converting leads, opportunities, tenders, whatever you want to call them, into actual business deals has increased to 22% in the last 2 years.
Amazing. And I think in terms of opportunities, winning 4 out of 7 is a hell of a lot better than winning 3 out of 10 when you consider the opportunity cost of the time and effort involved from a sales process perspective, particularly in a company that would have long sales cycles, enterprise software, like our industry from an Upland Altify perspective, or from your industry in financial services, which I suspect is quite long also. Garrett, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on Revenue Optimization Radio today. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Sean, thank you very much for your time.
You've been listening to Revenue Optimization Radio with your host, Sean Broderick, on the Funnel Radio channel. Podcasts of this live program are available from revenueoptimizationradio.com and all your favorite podcast apps, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more. The sponsor for this program has been Upland Altify.